Manali to Leh to the Zanskar Valley and back to Manali. 1500 kilometers, 10 days, 24 riders, no roads, little bit of roads, gravel, dust, sand, and importantly a challenge for the 390 adventure. This is the Great Ladakh Adventure Season 3. The route was a familiar one. The first leg would see the group heading from Manali to Leh, then from Leh to Pangyong, and then heading to Kargil. From Kargil, we'd change course once again to head into the fabled Zanskar Valley. It really is one of the best routes you could hope for in the region, packing in high altitude passes, challenging roads, beautiful Himalayan vistas, and long hard days of riding into the next 12 days. This was certainly a trip we were all raring to start. The group of 24 comprised of an eclectic mix of adventure riders from across the country.
Good evening friends, this is Chirag Gandhi from Surat.
I'm Jainil, I am from Bombay but I currently live in Gurgaon.
I'm Anirudh, I'm from Bangalore. I work for Aether Energy.
And many of them had ridden from their homes all the way to the start point at Manali. And while everyone came from different parts of the country and equally different backgrounds, it's almost uncanny how almost all of us were very similar in character. It's like the KTM Adventure really does attract a very particular owner. Calm, assured, and just like the name of the bike would suggest, proper adventure seekers.
Sitting out in Knoxville, on my way to Nashville, with my guitar by my side.
Day 1 was a very simple ride from Manali to Jispa. With the opening of the Untitled Tunnel, this was a relatively short ride too, 4 hours at the most. A good experience for all the riders to get used to riding in a pack, familiarize themselves with the narrow mountain roads, and get a small taste of what high altitude feels like.
Kenny Rogers on the radio.
After lunch at Jispa, we headed up the southern side of Shingula Pass for an acclimatization ride. Here we got our first small taste of some water crossings. But there were a lot more of these to come later on the ride. A lot more.
I'm a traveling cowboy, and I won't stop till the day I die.
The next day brought on everyone's first and proper test. 330 kilometers to Leh, crossing 4 high mountain passes along the way and spending a majority of the day above 13,000 feet. The group slowly made its way up and down the multiple passes, stopping to rehydrate, take a few photos at the passes and get back in the saddle. By 1 o'clock, 3 passes had been dealt with and it was time to stop at Pang for lunch. We were also halfway to Leh. Post-lunch, we got some time to get some cool photos of all the riders in the convoy before tackling Tanglangla, our last pass, and then heading down towards Leh. It was a long day in the saddle and the convoy only trickled into Leh past sundown. I think everyone was thanking their stars that the next day was a much needed rest day. Good afternoon from Leh. Today is my second rest day in Leh. We only had one planned rest day on this ride, and well, here's kind of why I have 2 rest days.
Do a check from every pass that we're going to do today. This is the last one. This is Tanglangla, and well, shit happens.
Well, when you come to Leh, when you're doing high altitude rides, stuff can happen. So yes, I did have a bit of AMS on the 14th. It was a long ride. We were riding from Jispa all the way to Leh. So it ended up being about 12-13 hours on the bike for people who stayed on the bike for the whole period of time. I actually
was completely exhausted by around 4:30 in the afternoon, and I had to quit riding at that time, and my oxygen level had also dropped. Now we had every backup that was needed. So there was an ambulance which had oxygen. We had a doctor who is really well trained and really greatly experienced in expeditions going to higher altitudes, so he knew exactly what I needed some time off the bike, and I needed a little bit of oxygen at that time because we were already quite high up. I think we were on the Murray Plains, and that's around about 14,000 feet, and I had Tanglang La to go as well. When you're up in the mountains, well, health always comes first. So if you feel just slightly little off, maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night, which is what happened in my case, and I took a call to say no, I'll pass on that, and I'll take an extra day of rest so that I can continue onwards with the ride. So two things: well planned and properly packed up tours are the way to go, and take good sensible decisions yourself. It was my decision to get off the bike and stop. It would have been much worse if I'd kept riding and kept pushing myself. I may have just ended up crashing the bike, because at that time when oxygen is low, you stop thinking as clearly as you should, and riding a bike on those kind of roads, in that kind of terrain, you need to be 100%, both physically and mentally. So sometimes they may be hard decisions to take, but take those decisions, always keeping your health first. I have taken an extra rest day today, while the rest of the group has gone on to Pangyong.
The rest of the group had another tough day in store. Leh to Pangyong and back is almost 300 kilometers of riding, with one big long Changla Pass in the middle of it. Ride together and limit your stops were the instructions, which they all followed, and post a quick lunch stop and some pictures of the beautiful lake. They made the journey back to Leh in good time. After a couple of days rest in Leh, I was raring to get back on the bike, and the group was raring to set off on the second leg of our journey towards Kargil. And what a day to get back on the bike it was. It started off with an off-road training session with our lead riders Varad More and Sangram Patil, and then we were let loose on a kilometer-long dirt track to put to test what we had just learned. Post the off-road experience, the rest of the ride to Kargil was on some of the nicest winding blacktop we saw on the whole trip. Those hundreds of kilometers disappeared so fast that we were in Kargil way before our tires, bikes or backsides had started to complain. The next day's ride was a 50-50 split between blacktop and broken roads, all the way to Padum. We were now entering the fabled Zanskar Valley. The roads, vistas and mountains were all changing shape and hue constantly. We had a beautiful ride from Kargil to Padum with a wonderful, the highlight has to have been the Drang Drung glacier that we saw on the way. That was a really beautiful sight, something to really cherish, and one of the memories I'll probably take back from this trip. Padum was the second designated rest stop of the trip, and so in the evening we took the time out to recharge our spirits in the only way we knew how: singing, storytelling and letting off steam. We were 2/3 through our Himalayan adventure.
Give me another chance, I wanna go up once again.
The next afternoon, the group took a ride up the side of a mountainside near Padum with two goals in mind. The first priority was sharpening our newly learned skills over broken surfaces, and the second, a more socially conscious reason, was clearing up all the plastic we could find on the trail, which is a popular hiker route to the higher mountains. Today is the last day of KTM's Great Ladakh Adventure Season 3. It's not the last day of rides per se, but it's the toughest day. We're going to have almost all off-roading today. So a lot of off-roading, a river crossing as much as 500 meters long, and plenty of soft sand. So it's going to be a lot of hard riding today. We had a little bit of tarmac heading out of the city, but just a few kilometers out of Padum, the off-roading started. We are at the pinnacle of this trip, the great Ladakh adventure with KTM. And that back there is the Gumbo Ranjan. It has great spiritual significance to this whole area. And well, it's kind of literally the highlight of this trip. But awaiting us just at the base of Gumbo Ranjan was the super long water crossing that we'd all been waiting for. Yes, there is a safer way to go, one that the cars took, but where's the fun in that, right? Successful water crossings require momentum, a steady throttle, and you need to allow the bike to go where it wants. Fight the bike, lose momentum, and it's time to take a dip. And the challenges kept on coming as immediately after the water crossings, we started our ascent of the Shinkula Pass. We are at Shinkula Pass, the last pass of the trip. If you remember, it was probably also the first pass of the trip. We came up here for a acclimatization ride. We've had a pretty off-road ride today. Complete off-road conditions, mud, sand, dust, fesh, river crossings that seemed like they were never going to end. But it's a little bittersweet now because, like I said, it's the last pass and it's all downhill from here. Thinking back on what I said then, it's rather telling in a number of ways. I'm looking south, back home, back to civilization from this remote escape. The beauty of this area is preserved so far by the fact that it is remote. But remote for how long? Padum to Jispa isn't even on the maps. In fact, Google will tell you to head back to Leh and go around just to get to Jispa. But almost every section that we took, including the last unmarked stretch, was being metalled and paved. Padum, a small town in the middle of the valley, is gearing up for an inflow of tourists, and new hotels are being built. Progress has reached this remote area of nowhere too, and so if you plan on experiencing it, do so as soon as you can, before the unspoiled is trodden over.
I rode this bike since last 3 years, but this is my first experience with Pro XP, and it is awesome.
I am happy ADV owner since 2020. I was the one of those guys who took the plunge in lockdown and took the decision that we have done enough inside. Let's go outside. So.
Okay.
The KTM Adventure was not my first choice. It was expensive for me at that point, right? But there was a discount running by KTM. One of my cousins had the bike, so as soon as I sat on the bike just felt like home. So it felt so natural, the posture, the comfort, the sitting style, and the power, of course. And I just had to go for it.
So I own a 390 ADV. I bought it in 2021. The only reason I bought it because I wanted a bike that could do all. Could take me to the terrains, could take me on the tarmac, could take me anywhere. I could go grocery shopping, but it should be something that mingles with all the bikes.
The majority of the group consisted of 390 adventures, but there were also two 250 adventures in the mix as well. As far as my ride for this trip was concerned, I started off riding the 2023 390 Adventure spoke wheels, the very top of the 390 Adventure lineup. A beautiful machine. The adjustable suspension, riding modes and spoke wheels meant it handled the rough stuff like a champ. The adjustable suspension allowed me to easily set up the bike to carry all my luggage and still keep the handling nimble as ever. A simple choice for the more advanced rider. I then switched to the Adventure X, which on the other hand sits at the other end of the 390 Adventure lineup. It doesn't get all the fancy bells and whistles of the spoke wheels, but still has a comfortable suspension setup, and the lack of rider modes or traction control made no difference to my progress through both the water crossings or the tricky sand. It's a great budget option to start your adventure journey. The last day was a simple ride from Jispa to Manali. A short 3-hour ride that was just enough time to reminisce on the ups and downs, both literally and figuratively, of the 11 days that had so swiftly gone by. This trip had it all, and what a beautiful experience it was. New friends were made, relationships, both interpersonal and man-machine, were forged and made more meaningful with this experience. And I can bet good money that I'm not the only one who feels this way.